So, up until this point, your membership has always been open. Members have been able to join anytime they wanted to, but you've made the decision that you're now going to close the doors and only let people join at set enrollment periods. This is a complete switch to your business model, to the way you market, and perhaps you don't really know what to expect, and maybe there's some things that are going to change with your membership that you haven't thought of. That's what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. If you're making the switch from open door membership to a closed door membership, you're going to want to pay attention, grab a notepad, because I've got some tips, some best practices, and some advice on what you can expect when you make this change to your membership. Here we go.
You're listening to the Membership Guys podcast, bringing you proven, practical tips and advice from the leading experts on growing a successful membership business each and every week. And now, here's your host, Mike Morrison.
Well, hello there. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of the Membership Guys podcast. This is episode 310, and today we're talking all about making the switch from having your membership always open to using the closed door model. Now, anyone who's been listening to us for a while will know that I'm not a big fan of the closed door model. In my extensive experience over the last decade or so, the memberships that do best are the ones that are always open. It just stands to reason. You have a product, you want to make it available and accessible for people to buy, for people to join when the time is right for them. However, we have talked before on the show about the fact that there are definitely some situations, some circumstances where having your doors closed and having a situation where people can only join at set times of the year, 2 or 3 times a year, where you have these enrollment periods. Some situations that is better suited to than having an always open model. In fact, I talked about what those situations are back in episode 267, if you want to look that up and get my thoughts on when a closed door model is a better fit than an open model. Now, today we're not going to go into the pros and cons. I'm not going to try to convince you one way or another. While I am more of an advocate, more of a fan of the open model, this episode and the one that follows is really designed to help people who've already made that decision. They've weighed up the pros and cons, and they've decided to either switch from having their doors always open to closing them, or they're switching from a closed door model to always being open. We're going to talk about that second situation in next week's episode, but today I wanted to share some tips, some advice, some insights into things that you may not have anticipated or thought about that you should really prepare for and really have a plan for when those changes kick in as a result of you switching from open to closed, because it is a substantial change. It's not just about tweaking the way in which you get sales or tweaking the way in which you market. Having a closed door membership is significantly different in a lot of areas to having an open door one. And a lot of people who make the switch, they haven't thought through some of those changes to the model, and they haven't necessarily prepared for them, and then they end up in a situation where they maybe regret the decision, even if the decision was done for the right reasons, even if they weighed up the pros and cons of switching one way or another. Simply by not anticipating or not knowing what was on the other side of that decision, they end up stuck. So hopefully today's episode will put you in a better position to really stick the landing when it comes to making that change in your business. So if you want to dive a little more into the pros and cons, into why we prefer open door to closed, into situations where you might want to go down the closed door route, then I'd advise you to check out the show notes for today's episode at themembershipguys.com/310. We'll have links to relevant episodes, relevant content that we put out there on that whole broader topic within the show notes for this episode. But we're going to keep focused. We're going to stick with the stuff that you need to know to make the most of that switch from open to closed. So the first thing you really need to do before you make that switch is get clear on your reasoning. So really, really think about and get clarity on why you're making this change. Is it because you are introducing something to your membership where it makes more sense to have an influx of members join at one set time and then maybe work through a course or a program or a roadmap at the same pace? There's definitely circumstances where that's going to be massively, massively beneficial, where you want that cohort of members who you can work with, who you can focus on, knowing that they all joined at the same time, they're all working through your membership content at the same pace. That's something that can be extremely valuable when it comes to the learning experience. And so if that's your reasoning, then that's a good reason. Get clear on what that is. Get clear on what the benefits of doing that is versus simply allowing people to join at different stages. Maybe you're making the switch because you've got several other things going on in your business. Perhaps your membership is just one of the things you do, and you also run perhaps live events and conferences. You also have coaching programs. And so you have to be a little more compartmentalized about the different elements of your business. So perhaps you're closing the doors to enable you to better juggle the other things you've got going on within your company, the other things that you offer to your audience. Or perhaps you're closing the doors because you know that you're better at marketing a closed door product where you have this launch promotion a few times a year. Perhaps you are absolutely fantastic at launching products. Perhaps you are just amazing at really leveraging scarcity marketing, urgency, deadlines, all that sort of stuff. Maybe you've got some amazing affiliates that you know you'll be able to make better use of with the closed door model than with an open door model. Whatever the reason, you need to really get that clarity, really nail that down. If you can't pinpoint an absolute coherent reason why you're closing the doors, or perhaps you're closing the doors based on someone else's reasoning, because some guru that you follow on Instagram tells you, well, if you're still running an open door membership, you're doing it all wrong because the secret of membership success is closing the doors. First of all, if you ever hear anyone saying stuff like that, run a mile because they are full of it. But, it happens. So if you're just closing the doors and you don't really know why, you're just doing what someone else has told you to do, then again, you need to kind of know that that is the case. And actually, if that is the case, maybe you need to think a little more about what the actual tangible benefits are going to be to you in your situation. The purpose of really taking that time, giving yourself the bandwidth, the breathing room to get absolute clarity on the reason you're making the switch is because you need to be able to communicate this to your members. Communication when you make major changes within your membership is absolutely key, because it's not just about tweaking the outward message. It's not just about changing things outwardly in your marketing, your sales strategy. You have active paying members that you need to keep in the loop. If you make major changes like this and you haven't really communicated anything about these changes to the existing members you have, that is going to lead to a lot of confusion. It might ruffle some feathers. It might change the dynamic within the membership in a way that leads to people leaving. So you need to communicate this change to your members to explain how will this impact them in real terms. How will this benefit them? Why is this a good thing for them? What does closing the doors enable you to do? What does it enable your community to do? What does it enable your membership to become? And why is that a good thing? Clear, transparent communication about this change, whether you're going open to close or close to open, is key to really, really nailing this process. And an additional benefit of getting that clarity, of being able to essentially make that compelling case, not just to yourself, but to others for why this change is happening. That extra benefit is you could actually create content about that. If you were in a podcast, you could do a podcast episode explaining what you are doing. We decided after 3 years of having an always open membership that we're going to close the doors. Here is why. Here's the behind the scenes. Here's the thought process, the strategy behind it. Not only does that give people a bit of insight, it gives you an opportunity to create that sort of behind the scenes content that people love, that people are drawn to, but it also is giving you an excuse to essentially start talking about the fact that there's now a limited amount of time people can join and all that sort of stuff. So you get to kind of sell by stealth within this content too. Something else you need to consider, and again, this comes down to communication before you make the switch. If you have a membership where a large proportion of your members who leave ultimately end up coming back to you a few months later, then you're going to want to make sure that you emphasize that this is not going to be possible going forward. When your doors are always open, then as long as you're treating your outgoing members, so people who are cancelling, as long as you're treating them well, and as long as you're parting on good terms, you will find a lot of people come back. I mentioned several times with Membership Academy, 25% thereabouts of people who leave the Academy ultimately come back to us within 6 months or so. That wouldn't be possible or as feasible or as flexible if the doors were closed and only opened once per year. So you're going to want to emphasize that, again, in your communications to your members, so they understand that they're not going to be able to just kind of come and go. Once they're in and the doors are closed, if they decide to leave, they're not going to have the opportunity to come back until the next enrollment period. And if you currently allow your members to put their subscription on hold, so you enable members to pause their subscription, again, that's something you might want to rethink. Allowing members to pause their subscription whenever they want to, it somewhat negates the point of having a closed door model if people can still effectively just come and go as they please. So these are the sorts of things I think a lot of people don't think about. Look at your current member behavior as it relates to people cancelling and coming back. Look at things like whether you let people pause their subscription and they can, self-manage and control that themselves. These are things that you're probably going to want to change with a closed door membership. And of course, a big thing that you should be doing before you make this change, don't just decide, okay, I'm picking a date. On this date, I'll flick the switch and what was an open membership then becomes a closed membership. You need to build a big, noisy promotion around the fact that those doors are going to be closing for the first time. This is kind of your first opportunity, really, to leverage the scarcity and the urgency that comes from having that deadline, having that date and time at which point your doors will close and people will not be able to join for another 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. So it should stand to reason, it should go without saying, that the first time you close your doors, you want the big promotion about the fact that there's now only a couple of weeks left to join the membership before the doors close for the remainder of the year. So if you were thinking about joining, you need to get in before this date. So make that big promotional activity, all that noise around that very first switch when you go from open all the time to closed. Great opportunity, great reason to reach out to ex-members, to reach out to people who maybe have gone through your sales funnel, they've been on your email list a little while, they've never joined before. Again, you want to go back to those people and see if we can almost reactivate them and reinvigorate their interest by pointing out the fact that, hey, you may have kind of just been sitting around waiting for the time to be right. Well, the opportunity is now restricted to this short window. Like, if you're going to join, you need to get off the fence, you need to make that decision. Don't use those words, but you get the point, right? So again, it's not just about running a promotion to new people who join your email list or to your wider audience. You want to go to those people who haven't yet joined. They've been on your list for a while. They've gone through your sales funnel. You pitched the membership to them, or people who've left your membership and haven't yet returned, to let them know, okay, the clock is ticking now. If you were ever thinking about coming back, if you were thinking about one day joining, now is the time, because time is running out. Something that people do not think enough about when it comes to changing their enrollment model, and that's actually, it's the right term for it. It's an enrollment model. It's either an always open enrollment model or it's a closed door limited enrollment model, right? Often people just look at this as a sales and marketing decision. But one big area you really need to understand will change is your member experience. This is something that will be impacted by switching from being always open to having closed doors, because your community may become or may be accustomed to having a consistent flow of new blood, new members coming in, introducing themselves, getting stuck in, the excitement, the enthusiasm that they bring. That's going to be changed. So instead of that consistent flow, you're going to have these big jolts, these big shots in the arm of new members, all the buzz, all the excitement, all the hype, dozens, hundreds and hundreds, hopefully, of new members all coming in at once, all being excited, all wanting to introduce themselves. And then that'll kind of ease off and there'll be no new blood for 6 months, 12 months, however long it is between your enrollment windows. That alters the dynamic of your community. So you need to be mindful of that, and you need to consider ways in which you can engage your community between launches to compensate for a lack of fresh blood. Now, this doesn't have to be a bad thing. This change to when you have that sudden rush 2 or 3 times a year of new members actually opens up more possibilities that you can't really exploit when you have an open door membership. If you know you're going to have a big influx of new members from your doors closing promotion, you can do things like throw a big launch party so you can get all those new members onto Zoom, and you can have them all bring their own cocktail, wearing party hats, and have that party environment because you have a lot of people there all coming in at once, all excited about getting started. You can't really do that when you have an open door membership, where perhaps, with an open door membership, if you're getting 1 member per day, then for a lot of people, that's enough. That's what they're striving towards. But it's kind of hard to have a welcome party, even if you're doing it every week, a welcome party with you and 7 people who've joined that week. It's just not the same. It's just not as feasible as a welcome party with 200 eager, excited, buzzing new members who've all joined at the same time. So yes, the dynamic is going to be altered. Yes, the lack of fresh blood is potentially going to change the feel around your community in between launches, but you just need to think of this differently. You just need to jump on some of the unique opportunities for engaging your members and taking advantage of the fact that you've got this buzz, you've got this excitement, everyone's coming in at the same time. It's an event, it's a happening, it's something of significance. So make sure that you are considering those possibilities and making use of them. If you have a community forum, so if you're using a forum rather than something like a Facebook group, then chances are you might have a separate section within your forum where new members can introduce themselves. This could be in a forum, it could be in a community platform like Circle, where again, you kind of can have different sections and topics. What you probably will want to do in a closed door community is either close or de-emphasize that introductions section. Because other than those first couple of weeks after your big launch, that section's just going to dry up. And it's going to stick out like a sore thumb, the fact that you haven't had anyone introduce themselves for several months. It's almost shining a light on something that, it's not a major problem, because of course you're not going to have people introduce themselves, in the intervening months. But if you still have an introduction section there and it shows that the last contribution was, 2, 3, 4 months ago, then it almost highlights something in a way that suggests it's a problem. So consider either de-emphasizing it, and by that I just mean moving it further down your list of sections, or closing it or hiding it in between your launches. So just think about the member experience side of things. Think about the community dynamic and the impact that can be had from changing the flow of members. Something else to consider on this front as well is the fact that your member numbers will drop. They absolutely will drop. When you have an always open membership, the upward trend, kind of if you plotted the membership growth and the member numbers out on a chart, it would just be a steady line, smoothly going up and up over time. When you have the launch model, there's a little more in terms of those peaks and troughs. So you have the member numbers will spike when you first open the doors, but people leave. Churn happens. People will cancel their membership in between launches, and because the doors are closed, you're not going to be replacing them. So you'll have those spikes, and then your member numbers will go down, 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 down. They won't plummet because, churn, unless you've got, ridiculously high churn, it'll be just kind of a slow recession of your member numbers. And then they'll spike again with the next reopening, and then they'll go down and down and down and down and down. Because if you've already been running an always open membership, you won't be accustomed to that. You'll hopefully be more accustomed to the fact that members who leave are usually exceeded by new members bringing in, so growth will continue. When you have the closed door, it's a very, very different picture. So you need to be mentally prepared for that and to understand that it doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It just means you've turned off the tap for replacing those outgoing members. And so it is going to look a little more up and down. You are probably going to get a little more bummed out, because if you're celebrating, hey, great, after this last launch, we hit a fantastic benchmark. We're at 1,000 members. And then a few months later, you're down to 800 members. Again, that is going to happen. You just need to be prepared for it and just understand it's part of this model. Something else to be prepared for is that you will almost definitely have higher refund rates. It's just par for the course when using any form of marketing that relies heavily on scarcity and deadlines to push people into a buying decision. There will be people, because of that scarcity and because you're saying to them, this is your only chance to buy. So you need to take action now or you miss that opportunity. Anytime that you're using those kind of tactics, there will be people who buy before they are ready because their hand is being forced and they're worried about missing out. Now, some of those people who buy before they feel ready, they'll come into the membership and they'll be glad that they did. They'll realize that, you know what, I should have joined earlier. I'm glad that the hand was forced. I'm glad that I was given this little kick up the butt to join now because, you know what, I can do this now. So yes, you'll get people who join before they're ready. Some of them will thank you for it, but others will realize they genuinely were not ready. The timing was bad. Their finances were bad. They just didn't have the bandwidth that they needed to be able to actually make use of your membership. And those people will suffer from buyer's remorse. They'll wish that they hadn't bothered because they'll wish that they hadn't bothered. They'll wish that they stuck to their gut instinct that it wasn't the right time, and they'll request a refund. It's going to happen. It does happen. This doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It's kind of just the trade-off for using scarcity and deadline-driven tactics. You will get higher refund rates. They're not going to be crazy. You're not going to have half of your members asking for a refund, but they'll certainly be higher than you'll have likely experienced before when your doors have been always open and when there's been less immediate pressure on people to join by a set date on your terms instead of then. So again, this doesn't mean that your decision to go from open to close was wrong. It doesn't mean that you've done things wrong or you're a bad membership owner. It's just how it is. It's just an effect of these kind of marketing tactics. And the hope is that there's more of those people who didn't feel ready to buy, but actually benefit from the fact that they were given that kick up the butt. Hopefully you'll have more of those people than you'll have the people who genuinely should not have joined because they were not ready. So it'll be almost worth those additional refunds, right? Something else I would urge you to do is to not buy into this myth that has been perpetuated about the closed door model, where it's suggested that closing the doors means that you can just forget about marketing. If you close the doors, that means you don't need to worry about marketing your membership. You don't need to worry about getting sales. You can just concentrate all your time and attention to loving on your members, to taking care of the members that you get. It's nonsense. Whether your doors are open all the time or whether they are closed and only open 2 or 3 times a year, you still need to market year round. You still need to show up in between your launches. This is a fatal mistake that so many memberships that follow this closed door model they've been taught. They've been taught incorrectly. And so they make this mistake of just switching off their marketing, switching off their attention on building an audience, on showing up, on staying top of mind. But you absolutely need to do these things. You absolutely need to market between your launches. You've got to market year round. You've got to generate new leads. You've got to build and expand your audience. You've got to stay top of mind. Otherwise, the next time you launch, you have zero momentum. You're being forgotten about. You've got no leads to market to. You're starting from scratch every launch period. Or, even worse, you're just marketing to the same people who were on your list on the last launch and the launch before. And you can only make it through 2 or 3 launch cycles before you totally burn out that list that you had. So you absolutely have to market your membership year round. You've got to feed the pipeline ready for when you open the doors to your membership again, so you can hit the ground running. You've got people who are salivating at the prospect of now being able to join this membership they waited for. Really, when it comes to your sales funnel, the main thing that is changing between open and close is when you are asking for the sale. When your doors are open, you'll usually ask for the sale pretty soon after someone signs up to your email list. They sign up to your email list, you put them through a sales sequence, and you make the pitch, you make your case of why they should join the membership, and you ask for the sale within, a week or 2 at most of them first subscribing to your email list. With a closed door model, you're not going to be asking for the sale as soon. You're only going to really be asking for the sale during your enrollment windows. But other than that detail, and it's not a small detail, but it's just one piece of the puzzle, other than that, the rest of your sales funnel, the rest of your marketing machine still needs to be working. You still need to be generating traffic to your site. You still need to be generating leads, getting people onto your email list, raising awareness about you, building your profile, demonstrating yourself as someone who is to be trusted, an expert someone wants to learn from, someone they want to spend time around, all that sort of stuff. You still need to be doing that. Now, if you're not going to be asking for the sale until months after someone subscribes to your email list, you need to think about how you're going to keep them engaged during that time and dissuade them from going to a competitor who might have a solution for them right now. So can you sell them something else? Do you have other products? Do you have other services? Can you engage them in a challenge, a free course? Can you get them into a Facebook group? Can you get them listening to your podcast and learning through that so that they're building up some fundamental knowledge that will better equip them for when your membership opens? You're still helping them make progress. They're still learning from you and they're building some momentum so that when you then open the doors to your membership, they're primed and they're ready to go. So don't buy into that myth that marketing stops. That if you have a closed door model, all you need to do is think about those launch promotions, but then between your launches, between those enrollment windows opening, then marketing goes to the back of the queue and you're only focused on the people in your membership. It's simply not true. Yes, the way in which you'll market your membership, the way in which you will directly sell the membership product when you'll ask for the sale, that will change. But everything else around building awareness, showing up, generating leads, that needs to continue regardless of what your enrollment model is. And the final thing that I want you to remember, if you've made that decision to switch from open to close, and that is coming up, you're putting together your plans to make that transition, I want you to remember that nothing is set in stone when it comes to your membership. That's the beauty of memberships. Memberships are an ever-evolving, living product. You are not creating a course where it's pretty final. You're not creating software where, again, you've got to get right and the decisions that you make are fairly permanent. They're fairly set in stone. With memberships are always changing. Nothing's set in stone. No decisions are final. If you close the doors, you try out this model for a while and then realize that it's just not for you and you preferred it when you were open all the time, then you can switch back. Now, of course, you don't want to be someone who's constantly flip-flopping, because that's going to confuse your audience. It's also going to mean that if for the fifth time you're saying to them, no, we've now, I know we closed, then we open, then we close, and then we open again, but now we've made the decision we're definitely a closed door membership. Like, you're going to lose the ability to actually convince your audience that you're for real. So you don't want to be someone who's just flip-flopping all over the place. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that if you make the move from open to close or close to open, that has to be a permanent thing, that it's all or nothing, that there's no going back. So if you're stressing out about it, if you're losing sleep because you're worrying whether you're making a mistake, or, what happens if we close the doors, we do a big launch and nobody joins, it might happen. But you have to keep in mind, with memberships especially, nothing is forever. You can change, you can roll back decisions, you can adapt, adjust, learn from what works, learn from what doesn't, and amend your model accordingly. And if you are in doubt, frame this upcoming change as a temporary thing. So you can actually say to people, okay, so this is the very first time we're actually doing this, but we're going to close the doors to the membership for new members from this date till this date. We're just going to be trying this out because of, and then you can go into your reasoning, and you can just outright and transparently say, and if it goes well, if we see that it works best for our members, then this is likely something we might stick with. You don't have to paint yourself into a corner and make out that this is forever. If in doubt, if you're a little nervous, if you're not sure that you're making the right decision, frame it as something that you're just trying out, or put it in the context of anything that's maybe going on in the world, going on in your business. We're still kind of coming out of a pandemic at the time of recording this episode, hopefully coming out of a pandemic. And so, if you'd wanted to make this decision when the pandemic was first hitting, you would have very good reasons for wanting to do that. We're just going to close the doors because while things are getting tough, I want to know that we can just concentrate fully on helping the members that we do have to weather this storm, right? Again, none of this has to be permanent, and you can, if you're a little nervous, if you don't want to, make the final decision, or you just want to test something out, it's okay to say this is a temporary thing as well. So if later on you do decide that the closed door model isn't for you and you want to switch back to being open all of the time, it doesn't seem like you're changing your mind. It doesn't seem like you're backtracking or that it didn't work. You've actually sowed the seeds for the fact that this is something we're trying out. This is a temporary thing. If it goes well, this may be the way we operate going forward, but we're going to base everything on feedback from our members, on what works best for our members, and make those decisions from there. So again, if you're in any doubt, if you're worried, if you're feeling the pressure, just remember that, especially when it comes to memberships, nothing is set in stone. All right, so if you are on the cusp of making that switch in your membership enrollment model from always open to closed with limited enrollment windows throughout the year, hopefully today's episode has helped you to better understand some of the things that you really need to be mindful of. You really need to have a plan of action for the things that are going to change, the things that maybe you've been taught incorrectly about what this model might mean for you. Before the switch, get clear on your reasoning, communicate the change clearly to your members, explain the impact, explain the benefit. Think about things like cancelling and returning. Think about things like paused members. Consider how this will change your member experience and any changes you might want to make in how you onboard, how you engage with your members. Prepare yourself for the fact that you're still going to have member churn, but you're not going to be replacing those members. So the numbers, as you see your member levels drop, you might feel that that sucks. You might be a bit bummed out in seeing that. That's just how it is when you've turned off the tap for new members. But the hope is that with each new launch, you more than make up for the members you lost between your new launch and the launch before that. Refund rates will go up. It's just how it is. And also the big myth, don't buy into this myth, this idea, this nonsense that you don't need to think about marketing in between launches. Just do your launches. That's all you need to do. No, You have to still market your membership year round. Got to stay top of mind, got to build those leads, get that traffic going. And if you are worried about the size of change, the size of decision that you're making, you're thinking, what happens if I regret this? You've always got the ability to change course again, to roll back that decision. Nothing is permanent, nothing set in stone with memberships. And in fact, if you find yourself with a closed door membership and you are then wanting to switch to being always open, next week's episode, we're going to dive in to the things you need to know for that process too. So whether you've always had the doors closed to your membership, whether you decided to make the switch a couple of years ago and now you want to change back, in next week's episode, we're basically doing the second part of what is a double header. We're talking about the reverse situation where you're going from closed door to open all the time. What do you need to think of? What do you need to prepare for? How will your business change? What might you not have realized about it? What myths are there? All that sort of stuff. I'm going to share that with you in the hopes of helping you to better navigate that change in your membership business. But if you are going from open to close, I do hope that you found today's episode useful. As always, if you enjoyed the episode, if you have a moment or two spare, I would so appreciate it if you would do me one teeny tiny little favor and leave a nice shiny 5-star review for our podcast within your app of choice, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or whatever the cool kids are listening to their podcasts on these days. If you could hit those nice 5 stars, rate and review, and leave a few words about how this podcast has helped you out, whether it's this specific episode, past episodes, or just listening to my funny accent every week keeps you entertained. I would love to hear from you about how the podcast has helped. I read every single review. I truly appreciate every single one of them, and I appreciate every second of your time that you give me to listen to the Membership Guys podcast. That is it from me for this week. I'll be back again next week with the second part of this double header where we're talking about switching from a closed door membership to always open. So if that's you, make sure you join us next week for episode 311 of the Membership Guys podcast. I'm out of here. If you enjoyed this week's episode of the Membership Guys podcast, we invite you to check out membershipacademy.com. The Membership Academy is the essential resource for anyone at any stage of starting, growing, and running a membership website. Whether you're still trying to figure out what your idea is going to be, or whether your website's already up and running and you're just looking for ways to grow it and attract new members, then the Membership Academy can help you to get to the next level. With our extensive course library, step-by-step membership roadmap, exclusive member-only discount perks and tools, as well as our supportive, active community that will help you along the way with feedback, encouragement and advice, the Membership Academy is the perfect place to be for anyone looking to start, manage and grow a successful membership business. Check it out at membershipacademy.com.